There are 5 preachers this morning. Any attempt at comprehensively describing our trip or the situation on the border does not naturally pair with being concise. We may go just a little long today, but please know that each participant, each preacher, has picked a lens through which they will speak of their journey to narrow the focus. We are leaving out a great deal. The last 2 days of our trip, we were in Falfurrias, Texas, about 100 miles north of the border, stocking water stations and learning about migration vis-a-vis thirst, heat, death, border patrol checkpoints, ranchers, coyotes, surveillance, search and rescue, and beautiful, life-giving, life-saving water. That story needs to be told as well, but on another day. For today, we focus on the first part of our trip at the border, mostly in Brownsville. Each participant in today's sermon traveled last Thursday, June 27th, to Texas. Marcy Wallace, Mike and Catherine Spinella, Chris Davison, a friend of Marcy's, and I flew to Texas to join in the work of Team Brownsville, a volunteer group that last year recognized 2 essential needs. The first is that people were gathering in a group on the Mexican side of the international bridge between Brownsville and Matamoros. While in Matamoros, migrants are given a number on a list. When the United States is ready to process a migrant, the first number on the list is called, and the migrant is allowed to walk across the bridge in order to declare asylum. Each morning and evening since last fall, a group of people from Team Brownsville walks the bridge to feed the group of waiting migrants in Matamoros, usually between 50 and 200 people. During our trip, we prepared 2 hot dinners and walked the bridge to serve those meals last week. We met people who had recently arrived at the bridge, but there were also those who had been waiting to cross to declare asylum for up to 6 months. Why wait? Why not just cross the Rio Grande and put your hands up to seek asylum? This was a question we asked frequently. The calculus is complicated and it shifts. Typically, though, those who wait at the bridge believe that in doing that, they are doing things the right way or the legal way, which will put them in better standing once they get to this country. The United States criminalizes crossing. It's a misdemeanor to cross between a port of entry, even the first time. And so, try waiting. Try waiting for anything for 6 months. Imagine what it would be like to flee your home, hike, hitchhike, travel by bus or car with children in tow to get to the river and to be given a number and not really know when that number will be called. Out of desperation to get here, many do cross the river, knowing that they will be put in detention once they do, but feel like they can't wait any longer. If a migrant crosses and they surrender or they are caught, they are taken to a detention facility for processing. When released, which can take days or weeks, they are taken to a bus station where they pick up bus tickets or they wait for funds from family to arrive in order to travel to their final destination. If they face a long wait at the bus station, they are taken to a shelter for food, showers, and rest. We visited 2 shelters in Brownsville and 1 in McAllen. We were grateful to first volunteer at Iglesia Bautista, the Baptist church in Brownsville. This church has been transformed over the last several months in response to what is happening. Every square inch of its facility is dedicated to migrant assistance. They have showers outside, grandmothers busily making taquitos and brewing coffee in the kitchen. Every spare room has clothes or toothpaste or food in it. During our stay in Brownsville, we cooked, we served food, we sorted, we stacked, we played with children, we volunteered at the bus station, we gave out shoelaces, belts, snacks, books, crayons, stickers, and we listened to the stories. And so as Mike, Chris, Marcy, and Catherine speak, I leave you with my 3 primary takeaways from this journey. Number 1, every migrant has a story, and it usually involves their lives or the lives of their children being threatened. We met people whose relatives had been murdered, and one man whose kidney had been removed against his will in order to pay a gang. Every migrant has a story, and it usually involves their lives or the lives of their children being threatened. Number two, almost every child we met in Texas was sick, and the United States government had helped make them so. It's summer, it's 95 degrees in Texas, but almost every child we met has a cold. Parents told us that their children had slept on concrete floors and were sometimes awakened by guards yelling at them, at little children, standing over them, pointing fingers at them. Almost every child that we met was sick, and the United States government had helped make them so. And number three, the people who are helping are many, and they are extraordinary. Every day in Brownsville, people greet migrants at the bridge and feed them. Every day, a team is at the Greyhound bus station greeting people, feeding them and handing out supplies. Every day at the shelters, at Iglesia Bautista and Good Neighbor in Brownsville, people are welcomed, offered dignity, respect, hospitality. Bienvenidos a los Estados Unidos. Welcome to the United States. Every day, dozens of Americans, in the midst of all that is happening, in the midst of this humanitarian crisis happening in our own nation, these Americans say in their own way, "Yet know this, the kingdom of God has come near." Mike?
Gracias. De nada. We all heard and participated in this simple, polite exchange countless times during the course of our visit. Thank you. You're welcome. In Matamoros, Mexico, just across the Rio Grande from Brownsville, Texas, the refugees awaiting dinner line up in the order of children, mothers with babies, women, then men. All were unfailingly polite, no matter how long they may have waited for dinner. Gracias from children, sometimes prompted by their parents. Gracias from women. Gracias from men. God bless you, so many people would say to us. I don't know about you, but I seldom feel much gratitude after I have suffered even the slightest indignity or inconvenience at the hands of a bureaucrat or during any number of other small day-to-day irritations. It is hard to imagine what these asylum seekers we met have already gone through. Two examples. As we served dinner in Matamoros, we met a 20-something-year-old man from Cuba who had made his way to Central America to start his journey to the U.S. border. And he described walking for so long through swamps and rivers in Panama that his toenails became softened into loose flaps. Another part of our visit, when we were working at a Brownsville church, Iglesia Bautista, that Dave mentioned, they welcome asylum seekers. And there we encountered a family from El Salvador who were traveling to my hometown of Richmond, Virginia. The father explained that he had a successful business at home, but he had to abandon it after gang members demanded payments and threatened his life if he refused. He knew they meant it, he said, because they had already killed his brother. Gratitude is not the first response that comes to mind when I think of what the people we encountered have been through and what struggles still lie ahead of them. We expected fatigue, and we saw plenty of that. But what we didn't see was frustration, anger, or indignation, even though those would be justifiable reactions to their circumstances. But we saw gratitude aplenty, and I found that gratitude is most inspiring and powerful when it is displayed in adversity. We also received unexpected gratitude from the many volunteers we worked with. Volunteers from Team Brownsville, like Sergio, Kanda, and Jim, or from Iglesia Bautista, such as Gabby and Rita, or from the South Texas Human Rights Center in Falfurrias, like Eddie and Ariana and Selena, just to name a few. They would regularly say to us things like, "Thank you for being here," or "We get so much energy from people who travel so far to help," or "Your presence here helps us to get things done and keeps us going." I had to remind myself that we were the newbies in this enterprise and often needed guidance and direction from these veterans. We worked with several groups who provide distinct yet coordinated services to asylum seekers. And the volunteers we met are on the front lines in a daily struggle to keep a human face on the immigration crisis at our southern border. I was astonished and touched that these heroes were thanking us for our efforts and our presence. And my hope going forward is that I will continue to be involved in whatever way I can, helpful in whatever small ways I can, so that I might actually deserve the gracias that I have received in this past week.
Hello, everybody. Just over a week ago, I headed to Brownsville, Texas with the team, lugging 2 50-pound bags of goods and a carry-on filled with Beanie Babies and crayons. Although I returned 110 pounds lighter, my heart was certainly much heavier than when I left. Having first lived and taught in New York City before deciding to cross over the bridge to New Jersey to raise my own family, I know what it's like to feel the stress of change. But when I look back on our move, I realize that it was oh so easy for my husband, John, and I to cross over that bridge and relocate ourselves into a new home with the support of family and friends. 5 months pregnant with our first child, we were filled with hope for a better life. When we crossed over the bridge to a migrant camp in Matamoros, Mexico, just across the river from Brownsville, Texas, I looked into the eyes of more than 100 men, women, and children seeking asylum from violence and persecution. Our mission was to serve them the food we had prepared just hours before. However, we all knew we were really there to bring them hope as they too searched for the promise of safety and a better life. Their journeys fraught with violence, discrimination, sacrifice, and oppression are often a far cry from hopeful. Even if their number is called to cross over that bridge into the U.S., the camps await them on the other side. They still have a long, uncertain journey ahead of them in order to attain the stream of happiness and safety. We met a lot of incredibly brave people on this journey, including those who have sacrificed everything to help these souls in need. However, I believe that the bravest of all were the migrant or immigrant mothers with their children held tightly to their sides. I met a woman named Angela Diaz. Angela, in Greek, means messenger, and her message was one of unwavering love for her children. She was 5 months pregnant, just like me when I crossed over the bridge. Only, unlike Angela, detainment did not await me on the other side. Angela had arrived at the encampment outside of what I equate to the Lincoln Tunnel 6 weeks earlier. She and her husband traveled from Cuba with their 1.5-year-old son, who, while I was with Angela, ran barefoot into traffic to chase a ball. We both jumped to rescue the boy. He was unharmed, but the visceral fear of what could have happened to him on that overcrowded bridge has yet to leave me. This is his backyard for now. Angela left her other child, her 9-year-old son, in Cuba. She and her husband say that when they find a home, they'll go back and they'll send for him. We cried together as she held his picture close to her deeply broken heart. In between tears, I tried in my best broken Spanish to tell her that she was going to be okay, though I knew I couldn't control her destiny. So instead I said, "No pierdas la fe," don't lose faith. Out of desperation, she motioned that she thought about crossing the river into the U.S., but that she feared that she and her family would drown. So they would wait indefinitely for their number to be called. I pressed my hand to my heart and then to my lips, and I wished her luck. The next evening, we attended a vigil in Brownsville, remembering the lives of those who had died in their attempt to cross the river into the U.S. Oscar Ramirez and his 23-month-old daughter, Angie, had drowned in the Rio Grande River just the week before. Gabriela Zavala, the executive director of the Respite Center at the local church, that we volunteered at summed up why people make this dangerous trip to the border. "We only know a few things about Oscar and Angie," she said, "but we do know this. We know that they, like many immigrants before them and many immigrants after them, made the ultimate sacrifice to leave their countries behind to brave a dangerous trek in search of safety and a better life. The irony of a journey to safety being a relentlessly dangerous one. Does it really have to be this way?" The singer Bono wrote, "Where you live should not decide whether you live or whether you die." Yet we see this dark reality play out time and time again. We're all seeking the same things in life: freedom from suffering and the pursuit of happiness. Freedom to cross over that bridge to live safely with our families, but some bridges are harder to cross than others. In the end, I learned that it's up to us to ensure that one day suffering is outweighed by happiness, violence replaced with peace, and discrimination with acceptance, so that finally despair may be eradicated by the sweetest gift of all, a crossover into a world of hope. Thank you.
So I have on my, Catherine and I bought from Kmart these boots so that we could traverse in the desert the second part of the trip without the brambles getting laces. And I wore this as somewhat of a joke because wherever we went, it was air conditioned and I was always freezing. It got to be the running joke, so I have my shawl on now to keep me warm. Before I read what I wrote, when Dave announced this trip, I guess it was back last March or whenever, it was something in me that just, he announced it, there was something in my heart that said, I have to go. And so I went home and I said to my husband, I said, you know, I'd really like to go on this trip. And he looked at me because I don't think the word refugee crisis, Mexico, immigrants had ever crossed my lips. And so when we first met as a group, Dave, we went around the room and Dave asked us, he said, "Why are you going on this trip?" And I looked at him and I was like, I have no idea. And I said it was just a call that I had. So now I know why. I went. I'm the crier. So I'll start with a quote from Henry David Thoreau. And the quote is, thanks, David. "The question is not what you look at, but what you see." What we looked at was many people waiting, a mass of humanity in various places, whether it was the bridge crossing into Matamoros, the bus station in Brownsville, Iglesia Bautista, a smaller resettlement house in Brownsville, or a much larger resettlement house in McAllen. This humanity was of all ages: young infants, kids, teenagers, young single men and women, pregnant women, elderly, male and female genders, gay and trans, and in terms of races, primarily South and Central American, Mexican, Cuban, and African. What we looked at was the terrain, whether it was the Rio Grande River as we crossed the river, the wall on the Brownsville side, the concrete and fencing of the Matamoros Bridge and Plaza, the concrete barricades that we served food on, the black plastic chairs for asylum seekers in the bus station, the makeshift showers for the immigrants to wash the grime, dust, and weariness off them. In Falfurrias, we looked at the vast ranch land with brambles, dust, and open, vast space, big plastic blue containers for water, CBP checkpoints, and fences, lots of fences. What we saw was something entirely different. We saw the depths of human emotion, be it courage, fear, sadness, tiredness, gratitude, love, and compassion. We saw immigrants, both children and adults, sick due to sleeping on concrete floors, air way too cold inside, and lack of sleep in the refugees' faces and eyes. We saw people that, despite their journeys, still joked in the plaza, sang songs, shared stories, wisdom, and experiences. We saw people who, despite all suffering, thanked us profusely for food, crayons, books, bubbles, shoelaces, and most importantly, for a smile, talk, handshake, or hug. We saw people like you and me trying to escape the desperate circumstances, gangs, abuse, and oppression to live a better life. What we saw was the resiliency of human life. Lives that, despite it all, could still hope, dream, and trust that, this is so hard, that lives would get better. As Dave said so simply and eloquently at one point in the beginning of a prayer, I am completely undone. I was completely undone watching these people cope with their situations and handle it with fortitude and appreciation for those helping them. I was undone by the work of the tireless volunteers, Sergio, Gabby, Rita, Pastor Navarro, Eddie, Selena, Kanda, Ariana, to name a few, that helped these people day after day, no matter what, if it was a holiday and 8:30 at night after a long day. I was undone by the fact that the work never stops. It is relentless, and it is not getting any easier. I was undone by the resiliency of the human spirit. I could not have done this trip without the underpinning of a deep faith in the goodness of humankind and the love and compassion that we all carry. I could not have done this trip without God and my cohorts on this journey, Dave, Mike, Catherine, and Chris. We were and are truly blessed.
Water, agua, life-giving, life-taking, transformative. It's a biblical theme, from the flood in Noah's time to the sacrament of baptism to the stories of wandering in the desert, hungry and thirsty. In our week in South Texas, we were reminded time and time again of the power of water to both give and, in some cases, take away hope and even life itself. The Rio Grande curves like a snake along the border. In Brownsville, walking across the bridge, it appears benign, but it is not. 4 days before we arrived in Brownsville, Oscar Ramirez and his 23-month-old daughter Valeria drowned there, attempting to swim across the river. You have undoubtedly seen the photo of Oscar and Valeria face down in the river. This very human face of tragedy, death, and destruction of dreams was remembered and honored in the candlelight prayer vigil Sunday night in Brownsville. We gathered by the wall, along the river, in a park named Hope Park, in front of a simple altar upon which had been placed a framed picture of the family. Together, We prayed that Oscar and Valeria did not die in vain, that values of justice, compassion, and dignity will prevail, and that all of us, in our own way, would seek safety, security, and hope for the innocents waiting at our border. Asylum seekers must survive weeks of treacherous travel through Central America and Mexico, weeks waiting in the plaza on the Mexican side, and often weeks in a detention center. No showers or clean clothes. But when they are transported to Iglesia Bautista Respite Center, the atmosphere is transformed. Folks pick out a new outfit and then go to the lovingly constructed outdoor shower center built by members of the congregation using water brought by pipe and hose from the parsonage. There we met Rita, who gently guides worn down, anxious, and insecure newcomers to select underwear and flip-flops and towels before stepping into a shower. The showers they take are soothing and rejuvenating. Rita smiles at all with a calm happiness, glad that her guests can take long showers. Afterwards, young boys smile and apply hair gel, girls and women choose hair scrunchies, young men shave. Deodorants, body sprays, Axe, florals, makeup, all are shared. 60 miles west, in McAllen, Texas, the scene in the Catholic Charities Respite Center is different. Hundreds and hundreds of released detainees are gathered in the downtown center. The needs are the same. The lines are much longer, the noise level higher, the volunteers spread more thin. I was the only volunteer helping in the showers where women and their children waited patiently in line. How could I, with almost no Spanish, encourage and support these women and children? Well, I could look them in the eye, I could greet and welcome them, I could offer a smile and a word of encouragement, I could hold and comfort a baby so that a mom could undress and have a few minutes to shower, I could fetch a diaper, I could wipe down a shower so it was tidy and clean for the next person. I could give priority to the many pregnant women in line. And in return, I could experience the smiles, the resolve, and the joy that are apparent after a shower, such a little thing that we take for granted, and experience the transformative power of water. And finally, in Falfurrias, where migrants traverse private ranches through desert and brush for days to avoid the inland checkpoint there, water is essential. And that's what the South Texas Human Rights Watch provides by placing water stations in the desert. And with each gallon of water, they provide hope and encouragement by inscribing words on the jugs. Pa adelante, forward, keep on going. Bienvenidos, compañeros. Welcome, friends and companions. Con Dios, God is with you. In these most dehumanizing of situations, the tireless volunteers, and I would call them saints, and the courageous migrants and asylum seekers found that common ground of warmth and respect and humanity and dignity for the individual. We can never know the impact of our actions, but it is my hope and my prayer that the messages we wrote on the water jugs, the life-giving water itself, and the healing power of a simple shower provide sustenance for the bodies and spirits of those engaged in this life and death struggle.